Rex, what do you see here?
Well, we got several leaf spring accessories that is offered by AFCO. The first one you see is a slider box. And what that is, it goes in place if you're building a car or relocating your rear springs. That actually replaces a conventional shackle, like the second picture of the Camaro shackle. The nice thing about the slider box is the spring can move fore and aft without adding or taking away spring rate. With a shackle, as the shackle swings forward, it can decrease or add spring rate with it as the car launches. With the slider box, you don't have issue. It's a lot more consistent.
Sure.
You can also mount that slider with the bolt being forward if you need to, or the spring, like if you're going after a squat situation rather than a separation, it gives the spring plenty of room to go backwards. And if you're building a car and working off separation on the rear end, you can actually mount that slider box where the bolt's more towards the back of the car, and you've got plenty of swing forward.
Sure. Good point. Good point. The thing that we want to make sure we talk about here is make sure that we evaluate all of our components in the rear suspension. At AFCO, we've got the slider boxes. We've got Camaro and Chrysler shackles, a new weld-on pad if you're having to start with a fresh axle housing. U-bolts. We've got two different lengths of U-bolts, 8-inch U-bolts or 9.5-inch U-bolts. And the longer U-bolts can be used when or if someone wants to run lowering blocks in the rear suspension. Lowering blocks come in a variety of thicknesses so that you can set the ride height to the desired dimension that you're looking for there. And then over to the far right of the screen, that lowering plate, that lower plate, that's the piece that sandwiches everything together. The U-bolts go through. If you've got lowering blocks, that goes on there as well. And then on the top side of that, you might see that there's a bung there. That's the shock mount. And if you're running just leaf springs in the rear of a suspension, we want to make sure that we try to address potential wheel hop. At AFCO, we've got lowering plates that you can spin one way or the other so that you can get your right shock positioned in front of the housing, left shock behind, so that you can address the wheel hop situation. So just wanted to make sure that we know that these items are available for purchase, and definitely something to keep in mind as we're evaluating the rear suspension.
That's very true, Eric. And one picture that's not on there is the lowering blocks that you mentioned a while ago. One of the things you need to watch on running lowering blocks in a car, the main purpose is just that. You can change your ride height of your car with them, but you need to be cautious not to go over 2.5 to 3 inches of lowering block, because the more lowering block you have in a car, the softer the effective spring rate is. Plus, it fatigues the leaf spring right in front of the lowering block. Another key issue on this is with the U-bolts, when you put those on, don't over tighten them. The torque on the U-bolts is normally around 45 pounds, and make sure you have the big washer on above between the nut and the spring plate when you tighten them down. But you want to torque those in a sequence, and 40 to 45 pounds is plenty of torque.
Hey, good point. That's a great bit of information that I don't know that is out there commonly. I think most people just grab the impact and one Ugga Dugga or two Ugga Dugga will do it, and I don't think that's what we're trying to promote here. So good information there, Rex.
The other thing, as far as we're talking about torquing, on your front and rear eye bolts on a leaf spring, 20 pounds of torque's plenty. Use a nylock, so it can't back off. But if you go more than 20, 25 pounds of torque, it actually causes bind in the car because you're clamping a leaf spring, so to speak, where the suspension cannot move freely.
That's a really good point. I think early on, we've all probably just grabbed a couple of wrenches and just gave it everything we had, regardless of where we were at on the car. And I think that over time, we've started to understand that. So that's another great tip from the pits, so to speak.
For more information, visit us at afcoracing.com.